It's 6 o'clock on the dot. We about to get hot talking about unschooling. Mm, mm, mm.
We back. Welcome back, guys.
Lee said that her youngest is 7 going on 50 and in second grade, and that there's a 15-year-old that is going to 10th grade. And I know that Empress has talked a little bit about some of the struggles that she's had within the New York City public school system. And Nayeja and I have talked extensively about our understanding and beliefs. I am an unschooling mom of two. Uh, my daughter is going to be 9 in 8 days and has never been in public school. What that means is the puzzle of learning has been one that we have unpacked and put together, right? We took the big puzzle of learning out of the box, and there are millions of pieces because it's an ever growing puzzle. Okay, it's one that we have not found the edges or the corners of because it is evolving based on her interests. We have not figured out what the large picture is supposed to look like because it is based on her evolution and a lot of the things that she picks up along the way. I am raising a very strong and powerful young lady, and that means that what she chooses to do with all of that learning that has happened is still yet to be seen. I am extremely proud of the ways that she has taken ownership and responsibility of her own learning and the ways that she has really shown me through the dedication and the personal interest that she has her level of innate intelligence. I have been behind the walls of the public school system for a very long time. And I decided as a counselor and an educator that I would not subject my child to the trauma being Black in America, being female in America, being of African and Caribbean descent. That wasn't the environment to cultivate all of her gifts and talents. And I recognize that because of the experiences I had, the levels of compartmentalizing and fragmenting of oneself, whether that be of her ethnic background and her pride in her culture, or whether it is the value systems that we subscribe to on a regular basis. Obviously, as an educator, I would teach my child at home. And what that means is that some of the curriculum that is taught in the school would contradict with the things that she is learning at home. And I saved myself the trouble of having to deal with all of the drama that comes with administrators, educators, and the like in public school. It wasn't until I moved to Georgia that I learned about self directed education, and it was a perfect fit for me. It definitely helped me to see that I was on the right trajectory when it came to my ideas around schooling Saida, and it helped to create a foundation for us from which to begin our unschooling journey. What is unschooling? You guys are more than welcome to jump in and add your 2 cents to this conversation because I know a lot of times we have an idea of what we think something is, and I would love to just help you guys shift that perspective if you're not 100% sure on what it might be. So, what is unschooling?
Life schooling outside of an institution, led by your child's interests. I think a lot of unschooling too is the parent doing a lot of unlearning as well. I guess people that are part of the system would consider to be unconventional schooling or learning opportunities without the parameters, without the four corners, physical and metaphorically speaking.
Thank you. So you say it's about life schooling, and it's not just about the child learning, but it's about the parents as well. Awesome. Do you agree? Second that notion? Have anything to add?
I remember you sharing a little bit about what it is, which I love. I genuinely feel like children, their creativity gets stifled, their discovery of their truest expression gets stifled because they need them to be quiet in a chair for 8 hours a day, you know?
Yeah.
And it doesn't encourage, even in just the time, from the time that we were in school to now watching my son go through his experience, I'm like, they've cut so many extracurricular activities. You know, the core components have become ridiculous, you know, and it became more about the bottom line than preparing, you know, building up decent human beings, really, you know, and who can tell you who they are by the time they graduate high school the way we used to be able to. To piggyback off of what Naisha said, definitely outside of the constructs of the classroom and not reinforcing the school to prison pipeline the way that is being pushed to date. But yeah, I was like, oh, y'all trying to put my son in prison. Oh no, honey. Yeah, like it blew my mind. So I love it.
Yes. Thank you. You guys definitely have a great basic understanding of what it is. And it does sound like at least you don't have the stereotypical disdain for young people actually learning in a more untraditional way. And that is really, it's been the joy of our experience to be able to learn in a way that's more aligned and individual, right? It kind of, these conversations from my last presentation will overlap in some way, because is learning and education just a universal thing, or is it individual? And for us, it's definitely an individual thing. There is not any one day that looks the same, and we embrace that because we have, for me, having that formal education experience and the public school experience when I was growing up, it definitely was important for me to keep some level of the structure, if you will, but also find a way to balance that for a young learner like my daughter. It is life school. And I say that because there are some days where for science, we're doing food science and we're understanding how foods actually work with each other. What are the health benefits to the food that we're eating? How do these things grow? Going into some of the behind the scenes stuff that children don't have the freedom access to do when they're in a public school setting, right?
I was saying they also don't have the room to be confident in their exploration either in those settings.
Absolutely. So the puzzle of learning through our unschooling journey, exploration is a huge component of that, right? There is a lot of discovery that happens just based on our everyday interactions, okay? And also a lot of it shows up in our family dynamic, right? We say that children that are unschooled don't necessarily have the socialization, right? If they're not in public school, they won't be socialized a certain way.
They don't even go to school to do that.
They are being socialized to reinforce those gender norms that we just talked about.
Yes.
They are being socialized into placing themselves in a particular box and only seeing themselves as worthy to fit in any particular side of that. They are also being taught in a lot of different ways that they cannot actually express themselves fully because of the environment that they're in. And that squelching of the self-expression and dehumanizing of our children really begs the question, how are they being socialized? And my answer would be that they're being socialized like animals, like being domesticated so that they can follow and conform to societal standards and norms, which goes into why I'm able to pose the question that I did in my last presentation,
Mhm.
because we have had to unpack these things and really sift through them so that I can explain to my daughter in a holistic way, right? An integrated wellness approach to how she should view herself and her value in this world. She cannot see herself as only being worthy because she's a mother, or that if she is not performing certain tasks and responsibilities, that she's not a good person, right? There's so many different ways that we are not allowing our children the room to actually be themselves in that environment. And I'm saying that as a former educator and public school employee, right? And it broke my heart, which is why I actually decided to leave. I want to show you in a more tangible way how we actually implement unschooling in our day-to-day life and what that means for us when we're doing it in more of a flexible and free way. A lot of the standardization that our kids are forced to endure prevents them from actually being able to ask questions in the classroom that will have them actually learn based on that experiential aspect. So I'm going to just briefly go over 10 different tools that we use in our unschooling journey that supports us with learning through life. Okay. So the first thing that we do is we quiz our questions in this natural way of learning, right? Which culminates everything that a person gathers, right? From all of these self-chosen activities and lived experiences, we ask a lot of questions. Hence, Mother May I, right? When my daughter comes to me and asks me certain questions about things, I sometimes, like us in our earlier conversation, I'm like, I don't know. I don't have the answers. I'm not really sure if this is the best way to approach it. I never really thought about it like that. And what I realized is that that is liberating for her to not feel like she's this inferior, unknowledgeable, blank slate that has to seek out all of her information and wisdom from the all-knowing adult in her life that is the expert on everything. Okay, so by questioning myself, like Nyasia has been doing in her pregnancy journey, right? Now, before we become a mother, most of these things don't even matter. But the moment that we actually know that we are embarking on that journey, so many questions come up, right? We become that open wound, and we also are now looking at ourselves like a book. We're going through it line by line, and we're examining and exploring all the things that could potentially be beneficial and harmful to our child, right? Us, we operate within a framework of freedom. Now that sounds contradictory, right? If you're free, then why do you need a framework? But it's because that is how nature works, right? When we think about the universal principles and universal laws that govern our everyday lives, you have free will, and there are still limitations to that, right? There are still some boundaries. There is a framework within that freedom that we have. And so, our unschooling journey is a reflection of that freedom within the framework. We assign leadership in different areas of our daily life and then implement that plan. And so, for example, I mentioned Saida having a breakdown yesterday because she missed her alarm. That's not on me. It was not on me to wake her up. It was not on me to set the alarm. it was not even on me to reinforce the alarm because I am more free in understanding that maybe she needed more sleep today. If she missed the alarm, it's okay. But because she has been assigned leadership and taking some ownership over her own learning, she actually places a heavier responsibility on herself to make sure that she upholds that framework that we have put in place. So the shared commitment that we have is that learning is our priority. And even in those moments, that's a teachable opportunity, a learning opportunity, right? To say, okay, how do I work this phone better so that the alarm rings so I can hear it when it's time for me to wake up? And she's also able to understand why the need for an alarm is even present. She understands that I am also responsible for my brother. I help my mom to take care of him. And if I want to be able to do the things that are necessary for myself, I have to wake up just a little bit earlier so I can focus on me. And then I can also be a part of my family dynamic. These are things that we've practiced over the years, but from an early age, she has been responsible for her own learning and leadership through implementing that plan. Basically, what we've done is just built upon what was already working in our dynamic. Okay, so unschooling really allows you, again, not a universal umbrella of what unschooling looks like, but it is a very individual and interest-based experience for us where we get to say, these are the things that work in our dynamic. Now, she knows that after a certain hour, I'm tapped out. Don't ask me nothing about school. I'm not even interested, right? So she understands that she has to work within that time frame so she can get my feedback. And then if that doesn't happen, she may have to wait until the next day. But because we built on what works for our family, it actually flows really smoothly. And from the outside looking in, it might look like chaos, but it is what actually plays well into the family structure that we have. I would say, just in this kind of introductory part, we are open, transparent, and truly inclusive in our process of learning. And that includes other stakeholders within our community, like tribe members such as Nayeja. You can always chime in and add some context to what I'm saying because you interact with Saida on a consistent basis, just through our family dynamic and how much she loves you. And she's like, I can't wait until Nayeja gets back to Georgia. Like, just really looking forward to having those moments. That open, transparent, and inclusive process allows her to learn from more than just me. It gives her the opportunity to cultivate her interests based on the things that she finds interesting about other people. So I'm going to pause real quick. I think there's something in the chat. Lady says, it takes parents to look at education as important and not a babysitter. Absolutely. It takes a village. Love that. I need unschooling now because my little one suffers from anxiety. Oh my God. And don't process the same. And she was deprived in pre-K and kindergarten the regular way because of COVID and other things. Yes, school wants you to get 20 questions right in 2 minutes, but she can get them all right, but she needs 5 minutes. She learns with her emotions, not like a robot. I've been telling those teachers this for years. Yes, very similar experience that was had with Empress's son. Not sure how New York City feels about it. Definitely want to look into that. Yes. Thank you so much for your feedback and sharing your experiences. Firstly, when I was in graduate school, my main course of study was around the mental emotional impact of school on children. And that included anxiety disorders and other ways that counselors are expected to diagnose or not diagnose, because they would have the school psychologists do that. But we would be the first line of defense to say this child seems to have a hyperactivity challenge, or they're having an intellectual development delay. We should set up a meeting so this child can be tested, so that this child can get an IEP, right? Individualized education plan. They have this umbrella of the curriculum and the standardization, but only if your child has an issue do they deserve to have an individualized education plan. Only then are they able to get access to certain resources. Only at that point, when the school is making more money off of your kid, are they actually going to get a school psychologist in there to help the school counselor with the huge caseload that they have to deal with all of the anxiety disorders, developmental challenges, and just uniqueness of the kids in the school. I can get on my soapbox about that, but instead, I just started unschooling my kid and found a way to cultivate learning spaces for other people that would support them in transitioning towards educational alternatives. I talk about this more in depth in my unschooling course, which I'm very, very excited about because I get to provide that educational counseling component about the different challenges that parents are having, give you that one-on-one support, you get some peer feedback, and we can walk through the unschooling process to create your own self-directed curriculum for your children based on where they are. Just briefly, the play, passion, purpose continuum of learning allows us to follow our children based on where they are developmentally as opposed to where they are age-wise. If you have a child that is still in the play stage, even though they're 11, that allows them to learn in the ways that's going to help them gather the most educational value from their experiences. Okay. If you have, for me, I have a 8-year-old that is passionate about origami. So she doesn't play with origami anymore. It's not just a toy, a fleeting thing. She's actually very passionate about it and has chosen to cultivate an origami club. And she is so committed to it that anytime she misses out on origami, she is like taking responsibility for that as if she were the teacher in the room, right? So I really appreciate how the play, passion, purpose continuum of learning allows children to move along that spectrum in a unique way to them and in a way that allows them to gain all of the purposeful learning that is there for them. Now, play is still purposeful. A lot of times we don't think that when kids are just playing that there's purpose to it, but there is so much learning that's happening in those moments. Same when it comes to them moving to the passion stage where they're really honed in on something, because now I hear Saida having conversations about cultivating a business around her passion, around her ideas, and I can help her brainstorm and offer resources that will help her to find purpose through the things that she's learning. So here's a quick example. I mentioned origami, and she started out playing with it. It was just something that she thought was interesting. It was actually very challenging. She wanted to give up a couple of times, and I was like, whatever, bro, I don't care. I'm not going to stress you about continuing to do origami because it's based on your interest. After, encouraging her, obviously, providing the resources for her to stick with it, she showed that she was passionate about it, and we were actually able to visit origami exhibit here in Atlanta. Now, that helped her to place purpose on her passion. She could actually see that in the larger world, there's a space for her doing origami all day. And therefore, it wasn't an issue, right? Most parents would be like, oh, get off of the video games or get off of the origami. You need to do something else. But when we're able to look outside of the box and see that origami exhibit traveled around the entire country for about 3 months each in different botanical gardens where they get to charge out the wazoo for you to come and visit this exhibit, that then created a sense of purpose for her in the world. It's like, okay, I can find some other things that I am interested in and make something out of it. It doesn't just have to be a hobby, okay? I'm going to check in with the chat. They wait till that instead of giving them what they need. Yes, the school system is notorious for that. I say that they always incubate the dragons that they call the reinforcements in to slay. And so as a school counselor, I definitely was a part of the reinforcement team that had to come in and slay the dragons that they had incubated in that unnatural learning environment. We also have these other components of learning together, like upholding safety, obviously modeling behavior, facilitating learning and building authentic relationships. Because I needed to understand these basic components of learning through a self-directed lens, that is what we came up with. The play, passion, purpose continuum, really understanding cooperative learning, what that looks like, having that framework for her to utilize. And in that, we get to explore and have all of these questions that we now feel even more comfortable questioning and exploring deeper into, allowing her to actually express to me those moments where I am not showing up for her in the ways that she needs me to. And that is a huge thing, especially as parents, especially for me as a solo mom, processing her emotions. Like, I don't have a partner that's really watching my behavior and how I'm showing up, how I'm expressing myself. So the family dynamic that we've cultivated allows her to be able to say, okay, mom, that really wasn't nice. It hurt my feelings. And I obviously am in tune with her emotions. So when I see that I may have done something that oversteps a boundary in some sort of way, we actually get to talk about that. And because we're talking about motherhood as spiritual mentorship, you guys are going to get a glimpse of one of those conversations, at least, to see how we restore the trust with each other. Because I'm not perfect. We are learning together. We are growing together. And in our unschooling process, we are putting together this puzzle of learning, but it's about life. We're learning about life. We're learning about how to interact with the people we care about and how we can actually gain some experiences that will help us along our journey. We write letters to ourselves. We really articulate the vision. We make it plain. So a lot of, let's say, her English language arts may not necessarily come from reading some boring textbook and trying to answer comprehension questions about it. What we can do is cultivate our own creative writing, where she gets to utilize all of those different skills. And then we can ask the questions that help her to connect the dots and use that critical thinking. We use a lot of real life examples as a way to learn. Another quick example is that we were driving to the store the other day. We got on the highway and we used the mile markers as a way to learn math. Now, if you can imagine, this is what I do, right? I love doing it. So it's not necessarily a challenge for me to find the teachable moment and extract it from life. But when we're paying attention, right? Once we've gotten into that space of like quizzing our questions and questioning everything, it makes it a bit easier to now see the rectangles on the planks of the wood behind me, right? It's not just wood, it's rectangular wood, right? It's not just a circular mirror, right? It's actually a reflective surface. Now we're going into science, right? It's not just that we're driving on the highway and there are signs that we can read and practice that skill set, but there are actually mile markers that use decimals to distinguish the distance between 1 mile and the other. Did we know that they were marked at 0.2 miles every time we pass one? That's another 0.2 miles that actually passed. And so we use that as a tool for learning. So we went from decimals on the highway markers to actually learning about fractions and how they turn into fractions. Because of that conversation, which she now loves fractions, she says, I want to learn how to add fractions. We learned that, and then we also learned equivalent fractions. That was all in a matter of 2 days. From getting on the highway, mommy having the thought, oh, look, the mile markers, they got decimals on them. Let's write that down or keep a mental note of that. When we got home, she helped me put the groceries away, right? This is life stuff. I'm not forcing her to sit down and do math for 45 minutes every single day to prove that she's done it. I am having her test those skills on a regular basis because I want her to be paying attention to her surroundings. The last thing that I will say about this, and I will open up for questions and then we can move into the final portion of our evening, is that we start each day with inspired intention. Not only are we able to center in on what it is that we're wanting to learn, how we're feeling every day. So I know how to handle her. I know how to approach the day. I know how much of the framework I can allow her to really engage with, or how much freedom she needs to have so that we can have a pleasant day. I mean, when you're in school, it's about productivity, but when we're unschooling, it's about being pleasant. It's about us actually having a good time. And the learning happens so much easier when our children are happy. Honestly, the anxiety and all of the other things that our kids have to contend with in that unnatural learning environment blocks them from actually being able to learn. And so we start our day with those inspired intentions. And let's just say mommy is on her conference for a couple of hours throughout the day. This is a young lady who has taken ownership of implementing the plan that we've set in place. She set her intentions for the day. And when it comes time for us to relax into our evening, she can then show me, this is what I intended to do today. This is what I actually got to. This is what I'd like to focus on before the night is out, if at all. These are things I didn't get to do. Sometimes she actually, again, places more pressure on herself than I do in order to actually accomplish her goals that she set out. But it gives us something to then reflect on, right? At the end of each day, we can reflect on those intentions. I can check in with her about how the learning has been happening, if she's enjoying it, does she understand it, and how I can support her moving forward each day to grasping just a little bit more of what it is that she's interested in. And that's what makes learning and the unschooling puzzle of learning actually fun for us. So I feel complete. I am totally excited to hear more about what you guys think, any questions that you have. Thank you.
Lady says in the comment, what about the parents that can't homeschool because we have to work, but know they need something different from what their school is providing? Any tips other than trying to get an IEP, which they are dragging on, or how to get school to support her on how I'm supporting her at home?
Wow, amazing. Thank you so much for those questions. Firstly, I want to acknowledge and honor all parents, regardless of where you fall on that spectrum. I know that many of us want to homeschool and can't. I'm going to tell you that I am one of those parents that, according to society standards, I can't homeschool, and I've chosen to. So all of my other decisions really surround that choice that I've made on behalf of my child. That is a hard choice to make. There are a lot of sacrifices that we have to really consciously look at and take leaps of faith to trust that the Most High is going to allow us to continue our homeschooling and unschooling journey. But it is not easy. So again, I honor all of the parents, regardless of where you are, even if there are parents that don't really know much about homeschooling and unschooling, but are interested in getting something different for their kids. Now, if you have to work and you can't homeschool, knowing that your child needs something different, I would say, shameless plug, you can obviously reach out to me for some support. I have a ton of different resources, workbooks, activity things that Saida and I have put together based on our unschooling journey, and they're really fun. They actually do not hold your child hostage to any of the foolishness. It gives them a chance to actually learn different ideas and topics in a way that's fun and integrative. Nyaja can actually speak to this as well. She got a chance to test run our Let's Talk About It math book, which really allowed us to go through fun activities for our kids. Even if they don't have the capacity to homeschool, you can do these things on your unwind days, on the weekends, on your breaks. You can implement them as fun games at the end of the day just to have some additional learning for them. Let's see, providing tips other than trying to get an IEP, which they are dragging on. Okay, for IEPs, it really is dependent on your school district. I will say, coming from the New York City public school system and then transitioning into the Georgia Department of Ed, there are differences in how they handle the IEPs and the delegation of resources and things like that. again, there's an umbrella, but then they still do things differently based on the district or the school that you're at. So I would say that's a more case by case, and I would have to maybe understand more of what's been going on so that I know how you can, find a workaround for that. Okay, like what questions to ask. Basically, I would support you in advocating for your child's rights and access to resources, but I would need to just know what challenges you're actually facing so I know how to direct you around some of those things that you're dealing with. How to get the school to support her and how to support at home. Yeah, I would just say reach out to me. This could actually be your free gift. I'm glad that I left it open ended. What I can offer you is a session with me where we can just talk a little bit more about what it is that your kids are experiencing. And because you're here with us until the end, I'm going to give you another free gift. All right. And I'm going to invite you to Origami Club with myself and my daughter so that you can participate and see how our unschooling journey has led to that passion project for her. How does that sound, lady?
And Sabi running the show. She runs the whole show. Mama is just supporting her, okay?
She's excited to have new origami members. That'll be a gift for you. And I'll send you the link on how you can schedule that session with me as well so I can answer more of your questions. Okay. How about you guys? Any other questions from the hostesses?
Miss Ma'am, I get to see you in action, so I'm just in awe. I'm just in awe. No question, just comments. I definitely look forward to having you a part of me and my baby's unschooling journey and giving tips and tricks and dropping gems and just another adult figure and advocate in their life for their self-learning journey. I definitely am constantly like taking like little mental notes about how you and Ty are operating and how you show up and how you advocate and the things that you specifically look into, just to better her experience as a person.
Thank you so much. You can tell and attest to the socialization, even though she's not been in public school. We had talked about supporting more parents and moms, especially with how to be a pillar of strength for their children, especially in the public school system. Any comments, ideas, questions, anything?
There is a huge difference. My son went to school in both New York and Georgia. The South was less interested in confining him, is what I found. They were much more like, okay, he can be in general ed and we can just pull him out of class for said counseling than to have him, because New York just was like, he need to be in special ed. They wasn't trying to hear nothing else, right? And I was advocating with them about like fighting them. I mean, girl, I was on WPIX Channel 11 News. I was on NBC Morning News. I was in the New York Daily News. Like, y'all not about to play with me and my child. So it really just does take parents to really, they have to be either the traditional route or the more unconventional self-directed learning, free from that conventionality. It still requires parents to educate themselves, because in order to be an advocate for your child, they have to know that they can't play with you, the educators, right? So I just had to become one of the parents that they feared. And the only way that I could do that was by understanding my son's rights, understanding my rights as a parent. I was calling the superintendent's office. I was calling the school chancellor's office. Okay, the Department of Education saw me, the central office saw me at least once a month. I was not playing with them, so you unfortunately, as much as you don't feel like we shouldn't have to go that hard to get access to the resources that any child needs. But when they see that you're not one of those parents who, like, I seen lady say earlier, at school, right there. It takes parents to look at education as important and not as a babysitter. There are a lot of educators who firmly feel like the parents just see school as a place for their kids to go for 8 hours a day. That's free. You know, they don't really get the engagement that they need from parents. So it's both. It's hard for me to say, oh, it's the parent's responsibility solely. Of course, it's your child. So I would absolutely say it's your responsibility to make sure you're getting your child what it is that they need. But we have a lot of school administrators and educators who are dropping the ball. Like you said, Atiba, it's the school psychologist's responsibility because the parents may not for real know, you know, they may just think they got a child that don't know how to act. That's, you know, and if the school psychologist sees that there could be something more, then they're supposed to get the ball rolling, and that's not happening in these schools. That's probably why I had to become one of the parents that they feared, because I was like, okay, so say I see talking to you guys as not getting us anywhere. Okay, so I had to get on my Black Karen on them real quick. You know, like I'm gonna start writing letters. I'm gonna start calling your boss. I'm going over your head because y'all not giving me the respect that I deserve as a parent. So I would just say, parents, just you got to be on it. You just have to be your child's great, like, loudest voice and loudest cheerleader. Of course, that does depend on the county that you're in. As I stated before, the process of schooling and getting access to resources and services in New York it's like trying to sneak into a maximum security prison. And in Georgia, it's like they don't want children to have those type of restrictions. So they will do their best to still provide them what it is they need in the least restrictive setting as possible, which was very different than my experience in New York. New York, they was trying to have him in a class with like 6 kids, you know, and 5 adults. And I'm like, he don't need that. Like, that's extreme. He does need more attention or more time on his testing or what have you. So yeah, I'll just say it's up to the parents, especially if you feel like the school is not trying to collaborate with you for your child's best interest.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you for that insight and just sharing more of your experiences. Again, I'm definitely available to you to answer some of those questions.
Oh yes. Can you drop how they can contact you in the chat, email address,
yes,
or Instagram or something?
Yeah, I'm not on social media.
This lady ain't on.
Oh yeah, I know.
I live my politics, y'all. That's one. It's not an easy road to take because it means that I have to walk the road less traveled. I mean, the reality is the sacrifices that I make in order to be the advocate that my children need, that my daughter needs, especially, it's not for the faint of heart. Like, you can ask Nyada. She is part of my tribe. She is seeing all of the different challenges that come with making the hard decision between allowing your child to be a part of an oppressive educational system that sets our children up for failure, attacks their mental health and well-being, and quite frankly puts them in more danger than if they were just in their own damn communities, you know, having learning opportunities and exploring. Okay. Yes, I live in Georgia, but I also understand what that means in New York because I'm from New York. I was a part of that public school system. I was in the room when we were having the meetings and the administrators are calling 4th grade boys thugs because they want to socialize and be in school with their friends. Like, it's actually safer. Yes, our communities are not as quote unquote safe as we would want them to be. That is also an oppressive system that we have to be willing to look at, right? But the school system is one of those places that allows the microcosm of society to play out. So for every one of the challenges that you think we have in larger society, it is actually happening in the school every single day. The administrators, teachers, educators, principals, superintendents, all of those people, they are a part of that societal hierarchy and structure that is reinforcing these standards. And so that's a hard decision to make, right? I got to go to work, but I got to send my kids here. For me, I was like, the only job I have to keep is motherhood, and I'm going to figure the rest of it out, right? I'm going to be the biggest advocate for my child, like Empress said. I'm going to be the principal, administrator, the teacher, all of that, because I don't want to have to jump through these bureaucratic hoops to get my child the resources that she needs. And thankfully, I have a child that doesn't fall on any of the spectrums, right? Because that added complexity as a school counselor, I completely understand the challenges that parents have to go through, having to go through ABA therapy and things of that nature. It becomes increasingly more of a challenge within the public school system to get what it is that our kids need. So advocating, yes, making some of those sacrifices, yes, and also having conversations with your kids. I'm gonna be honest with you. I've talked to a lot of kids. I hang out with kids for fun. Not always my own kids, it ain't always so fun, but when it comes to learning and that educational realm, like that is my wheelhouse. I love to understand how kids are feeling about their experiences, what they're observing, and how it's impacting them. And if we just had, I told Empress I was going to do this. I was going to have a school forum for parents that want to just talk about how they can't stand school and allow their kids also to express and emote, right? Honor those feelings that they have about the frustrations that they're contending with in the school system so that we can find a productive way forward. Because it's really just a matter of doing the research around what the requirements are in your specific state to homeschool and find a way to work with that. Okay, we do have the responsibility to work and provide for our families. We all have that, male or female, but we also have a responsibility to shape their worldview and their perspective in a way that allows them to be socially conscious and whole human beings, ones that are happy with their life experience, because that impacts the rest of their lives. This stage of childhood is very short. By the time they get to adolescence and that those early teen years, they're already starting to question the world and us as parents in a much different way. Not only are they changing internally, but their world is changing, right? How they view their world is changing. And that's something that we need to honor and respect. So having those conversations about what our kids really want and then finding ways to work around that.